country, power in the land, power in the hand of the worker. But it all amounts to nothing if together we don't stand. There is power in our union. Now the lessons of the past are all learned with workers' blood and strikes on.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the April 4th Coalition Show, even though we're looking at dicks. My name is Elizabeth Nance, and I welcome you to the March 17th edition of the show. The April 4th Coalition's mission statement is, we are for workers' rights and collective bargaining rights, and are against tax breaks for the rich and corporations who ship our jobs overseas. We support all the articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but as is our custom, we're going to put the emphasis on Article 23. Dick has number 1, Sue number 2, Rachel number 3. I've been away, so I'm rusty, and I have number 4.
All right, here we go. Article 23, Section 1. Everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work, and protection against unemployment.
Sue.
Anyone without any discrimination has the right to equal pay for equal work.
3, everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration, ensuring for himself and his family or her family an existence worthy of human dignity and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection.
Number 4, everyone has the right to form and join trade unions for the protection of her or his interests. Okay, Dick, I've been away for a couple of weeks, so catch me up.
Well, we've been talking about...
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot part of the opening. See, I
Sorry.
told you I'm rusty.
That's all right.
I forgot to thank Matthew Tucker, Nicole A. Brown, and Joel and Hurlbut, who are the fabulous staff here at Northern Berkshire Community Television Corp, for their assistance in helping us put on the show. And to Michael Putnam, Program Director of WMNB, for airing the audio portions of our show on Friday at 6 p.m. And now, Dick, you can catch
Well,
me
we've
up.
been talking about the constitutional crisis over the past few weeks that's gone on since the new administration has taken over. And we were watching a video on So You Want to Be a Dictator, but today we're going to shift gears and we're going to look at the amendment to the Constitution, the First Amendment. And so, there's a lot's been going on here. So, we have a video from the National Constitutional Center, and it includes a cameo from Elena Kagan from the Supreme Court, and it talks about the First Amendment and how the Supreme Court and legal scholars and citizens have been interpreting it over the years. I think we have to reinforce that these are our fundamental, basic human rights that are guaranteed within our Constitution, and they should not be trampled on by some elected official. So let's listen to that video and see what it has to say.
Hi, I'm Leah, and we're here at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. Right over there is Independence Hall, the place where our founders met to write the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Today, we're going to focus on the First Amendment. You've heard of the Bill of Rights. You know, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. Well, the First Amendment is probably the most famous one because it includes what we call the 5 freedoms: the freedom of religion, the freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of petition. But what are these 5 freedoms really about? What's the big idea behind them, and why do they represent the core of American democracy? To find out, let's ask an authority on Constitution law, Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan.
The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. And I guess one question to ask, maybe the first question, is why is that in the Constitution at all? Why did the framers put it there? I think you have to go back to the history, and you have to understand this was maybe a decade, a little bit more than that, after Americans had broken from England, had declared their independence, and had started the great experiment of founding a new nation. And what was clearest in their minds, front and center, was the need to give people the ability to do what they had just done, which was to criticize the government, to say why the government was acting wrongly, and to say that they wanted no part of it anymore. And that was the whole idea of the First Amendment, was to say, you have a right. It's a constitutional right. It's the highest kind of right that you can have. You have a right to tell the government why it's no longer to be respected, either when you're off fomenting a revolution, or less dramatically, when the government is just making bad choices, choices that you want to change. You have the ability to tell government officials what it is they're doing wrong.
The First Amendment protects the rights of freedom of thought, expression, and conscience. The framers of the Constitution believe that these are natural rights that are so special they're given to you by God or by nature and are above the government. So where did this idea come from in America? Thomas Jefferson read the ideas of a guy named John Locke and embedded the idea of natural rights in the second sentence of the Declaration of Independence. You may have heard this one before. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. That's it right there. Unalienable rights. Those are natural rights. The writers of the Bill of Rights knew that in order to protect our rights, we form governments, and that's expressed in the second sentence of the Declaration. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Let's ask Jeff Rosen, the head of the National Constitution Center, to tell us a little bit more about this.
When we move from the state of nature to civil society, we alienate or surrender to government the power to control certain rights in order to obtain greater security and safety of the rights we've retained. What's the quintessential unalienable and retained right? Well, it's the right of conscience. But what happens when government threatens the very rights that it's supposed to protect? That's where the Bill of Rights comes in. So when James Madison drafted the Bill of Rights, he didn't make it up out of thin air. He cut and pasted from the Revolutionary-era state constitutions that were drafted beginning in 1776. So let's go check out those Revolutionary-era sources to understand why it was that the framers thought that the rights of the First Amendment were natural and unalienable. And let's begin with the New Hampshire Constitution of 1783, because that better expresses the natural law foundation of the conscience rights than any other. Among the natural rights, some are in their very nature unalienable, because no equivalent can be given or received for them. Of this kind are the rights of conscience. The Virginia Declaration of Rights of 1776 gives us even more detail. This is so important. It was written by George Mason, and Madison and Jefferson had it by their sides when they wrote the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence. Listen to this amazing language. That religion, or the duty which we owe to our Creator, and the manner of discharging it can be directed only by reason and conviction, not by force or violence, and therefore all men are equally entitled to the free exercise of religion according to the dictates of conscience. Isn't that a remarkable statement of the Enlightenment faith? Only reason and conviction, not force or violence, can determine our religious beliefs or lack of beliefs. And then finally, to complete this fascinating puzzle, let's look at Madison's memorial and remonstrance against religious assessments from 1786, where he quoted that language from the Virginia Declaration of Rights, and goes on to say, "The religion, then, of every man must be left to the conviction and conscience of every man, and it is the right of every man to exercise it as these may dictate. This right is in its nature an unalienable right. It is unalienable because the opinions of men, depending only on the evidence contemplated by their own minds, cannot follow the dictates of other men." And that is just such a beautiful encapsulation of the Enlightenment philosophy, and that's why Madison later went on to say that the rights of conscience and opinion must be equally and completely exempted from government regulation, and that is why the final text of the First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law respecting the freedom of speech, religion, press, assembly, or petition.
So that's the rundown of the First Amendment. The framers of the Constitution thought that our opinions and beliefs are the product of reason, and the government cannot coerce or compel our opinions and beliefs in any way. They are ours, and we have the right to them, even if they're unpopular. The framers thought that we as individuals have the freedom to think, to worship, to believe, and we also have the freedom to express our opinions and beliefs, unless those opinions are intended to and likely to cause imminent violence.
I see two dangers in there that can be interpreted. The one about, they can say, that, hey, your words are going to cause imminent violence, and then they're going to, which is what they did, correct?
Yeah.
Already to the young gentleman. They said his words and actions were going to cause imminent violence, and therefore they
Well,
arrested him.
we'll
basically.
see in the next discussion on that.
And I also see danger in the word respecting, because that's, could have different interpretations. If you want to twist it, there's a way to twist it. I mean, I know what 200 years have agreed and said, that we have the right to think. I have the right to say what I'm saying right now, and you have the right to disagree.
And I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm just going to say how important separation of church and state are. Absolutely important. And also it has evolved, which our Constitution continues to do and needs to do, that it's not just men and women, or everybody, yes, has to be able. And those who do not believe have a right to also exercise their right not to believe. And you know that I have really strong opinions on separation of church and state. Even the word God added to the Pledge of Allegiance was done as in fear after Joe McCarthy and his horrible, whatever, all the stuff he was doing in the 1950s, and that got added, I think, in 1954.
Yeah.
So.
The one thing that strikes me is when it says in the First Amendment, says Congress shall make no laws.
Yeah.
It doesn't even consider the fact that a president could feel that they have the authority to make laws by just signing a piece of paper. The president's job is to interpret the laws that the Congress passed. And so they did not want a dictator. They did not want one person to be in charge. They gave their lives, many of them, and their lives were threatened because they stood up to a king. And so let's see what's happening now. We have a video here that was on was it Christian Amanpour and Company on PBS. Amanpour. Christian Amanpour. It's an ACLU legal director on the arrest of the Palestinian activist Hamon Kahil. So let's hear what she has to say.
In court today, the judge was dealing with the emergency motion for Mr. Khalil's legal team to have more access to him. As you know, the Trump administration illegally detained and arrested Mr. Khalil, a lawful permanent resident of the United States and a Columbia Law University student. They whisked him away from his pregnant wife, his family, and his community in New York City, and transported him to an ICE detention center in Louisiana, initially without permitting him contact with his wife or his attorneys. Now, the Trump administration, as you said, admittedly is trying to deport Mr. Khalil because of his speech and protest in support of the human rights of Palestinians. The government admits that he has not broken any laws, and instead they're invoking this obscure immigration law that provides that the Secretary of State may designate someone for deportation if the government has reasonable ground to believe that their presence has a potentially serious adverse effect on foreign policy for the United States.
Okay.
Now, this is completely, yes.
I want to play what Secretary of State Rubio said to exactly your point just earlier today. He said, this is not about freedom of speech. It's not about that. He also said, I have the right to revoke anything, as you said, if it violates our foreign policy standards, etc. This is what he said, and I'm going to play it.
If you tell us when you apply, hi, I'm trying to get into the United States on a student visa, I am a big supporter of Hamas, a murderous, barbaric group that kidnaps children, that rapes teenage girls, that takes hostages, that allows them to die in captivity, that returns more bodies than live hostages. If you tell us that you are in favor of a group like this, And if you tell us when you apply for your visa, and by the way, I intend to come to your country as a student and rile up all kinds of anti-Jewish student, anti-Semitic activities, I intend to shut down your universities. If you told us all these things when you applied for a visa, we would deny your visa. I hope we would.
Right. So he's laid all that out. Of course, if we were to tell him that, then clearly we would not be accepted in the United States. But what he's saying is that, it seems to me, I want to know how you as a legal expert view that. He's essentially suggesting that this is all applies to Mahmoud Khalil, and yet there have been no charges leveled against him to touch any of those accusations. Am I correct?
You are correct, Christian. And here's the problem with what Secretary Rubio and President Trump are saying. The First Amendment protects everyone in the United States, and the government cannot single someone out for any kind of punishment, including deportation, simply because of the position that he's taken in protest and in exercising his rights under the First Amendment. Secretary Rubio is simply wrong to try to read that immigration law in a way that is inconsistent with the fundamentals of American life in the First Amendment.
So again, he's staying there. The judge today ruled he has to stay in detention in Louisiana, but that his legal team, which apparently hadn't had any contact, physical contact, until now, will be able to have more contact with him. But the question is, his lawyers obviously denied that he was supporting Hamas. He is a Palestinian university activist. He was at these protests, but they deny that he was sending out Hamas pamphlets or supporting Hamas. So again, what is the problem here, and what is the bigger picture?
The basic problem is, number one, the Trump administration is trying to smear Mahmoud Khalil and with a completely baseless charge about what it is that he said. But more fundamentally, the problem with what the government is trying to do is that they are, regardless of the truth or falsity of what their charges are on the facts, the First Amendment protects Mr. Khalil's right, and everyone in the United States, all of our rights, to say what we believe, to protest whatever we like to protest. And it is completely contrary to the First Amendment and to our basic fundamentals of American life and American democracy for the government to do this. In detaining and in trying to deport Mahmoud Khalil, what the Trump administration is doing is not just attacking him and his family. They're not just attacking immigrants. They are attacking a fundamental American right. And I'd add, Christian, that this is part of a larger pattern, a very disturbing pattern of the Trump administration's actions against people he considers to be his political enemies or disfavored minorities. Whether Trump is going after transgender youth or immigrants or pursuing his policy objectives, when he starts to punish people and censor people and try to chill Americans' rights to speak out against him, he's attacking all of us and our constitutional values. And this is a very disturbing, large step toward an authoritarian government. And I think that we will start to see Americans across the ideological spectrum, from left to right, regardless of party, regardless of ideology. The Trump administration and Donald Trump are going way too far here.
I absolutely agree with everything Attorney Wang is saying. Every American should be absolutely horrified and frightened by what's happening to Mr. Mahmoud Khalil. He's had trouble. I think he's only had a couple of conversations with his attorney, and you might want to watch the interviews with his attorney. This is his wife, who's 8 months pregnant, is an American citizen. He has legal status in the United States, and you just can't. I don't have a president, I don't have a vice president, I don't have a secretary of state, I don't have a speaker of the House. I am terrified for our country. And when I see what can happen to him, they move in the middle of the night, take him out of his apartment and take him to, is it Louisiana, where he is?
They wouldn't even identify themselves. When the wife was videotaping them, they wouldn't identify who they were, what law enforcement agency they were from. They were plain clothes, and they just came and whisked him away. And that's very chilling. And,
It is. That's C-10.
It's Abu Ghraib. This is, you know, this is really, really horrible. And this is not what we are supposed to be in the United States of America.
Did they open the door and let them in? Or did they?
I don't know those details, you know.
I'm curious about that because obviously.
If they broke down the door, I don't know.
We'll have to, there is another video, though, that I'd like to show.
Okay.
It was on Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman. And it's never again for anyone. That's a quote. It's from Jewish activists arrest at Trump Tower protesting this arrest. And so there were over 300 protesters in the Jewish Voice for Peace that flooded the lobby at Trump Tower on Thursday, wearing red shirts that say "Not in our name." Let's listen to that broadcast.
Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia University graduate and protest leader being held in ICE detention, felt like he was being kidnapped when he was arrested last week and flown to Louisiana, shackled and in handcuffs by agents who never identified themselves. That's according to an updated lawsuit filed by Khalil's legal team late Thursday. They say his treatment by federal authorities reminded Khalil, who's Palestinian and grew up in Syria, of the time he left Syria in 2013 when his friends were being forcibly disappeared by the Assad regime. Less than a week after immigration authorities detained Khalil, Department of Homeland Security, or DHS agents, were back on Columbia University's campus late Thursday to serve 2 search warrants. Columbia's interim president said no one was arrested or detained and that the university was obligated to comply with the warrants. Earlier on Thursday, the Trump administration sent a letter to Columbia with a list of required policy changes it must meet by March 20th in order to begin negotiations to reinstate the $400 million in federal funding the federal government canceled last week over alleged inaction in addressing what they called anti-Semitism. The letter outlines 9 preconditions the university must comply with. These include disciplining students involved in Gaza solidarity protests last spring with expulsion or more severe suspension, turning campus safety officers into police, adopting a definition of anti-Semitism that could limit criticism of Israel, and taking over the Department of Middle East, South Asian, and African Studies. In a post on social media, the retired Columbia law professor Catherine Franke described the letter as a ransom note. Before news of the letter was revealed, Columbia's administration announced a range of punishments affecting at least 22 students involved in the occupation of a campus building last spring. The students were expelled, suspended for several years, or had their degrees temporarily revoked. Meanwhile, opposition to the Trump administration's attempt to deport Mahmoud Khalil is only growing. Here in New York, Jewish Voice for Peace organized a nonviolent civil disobedience Thursday in the lobby of the Trump Tower, right by the golden escalator where Donald Trump famously descended as he first announced his decision to run for president back in 2015. Some 300 protesters flooded the Trump Tower lobby, demanding the immediate release of Mahmoud Khalil. Nearly 100 protesters were arrested and faced charges of trespassing, obstruction, and resisting arrest. Democracy Now! Was at the protest.
We're here at Trump Tower, where hundreds of protesters have gathered, unfurling banners that say, "Jews say do not comply. You can't deport a movement," calling for Mahmoud Khalil to be freed. Banners that say, "Never again for anyone. No Muslim ban ever." People are protesting, saying, "We've got your back." Students, we've got your back. Mahmoud, we've got your back. Gaza, we've got your back. Trans people, and more. The police are beginning to move in. to be arrested have gone up the escalator. We'll see what happens. We're in the middle of Trump Tower here in Midtown Manhattan.
My name's Elena Stein. I'm with Jewish Voice for Peace. We're here today with 300 Jewish people and friends, all of whom are taking the day off work to occupy, to take over Trump Tower, because we know that Mahmoud's case is a pressure test. The Trump administration wants to know if they can crush dissent altogether. So it's Mahmoud's case. He's been abducted, but they're coming for so many more people. They're starting with non-citizen students. They'll move to the whole movement for Palestinian liberation, and they'll do that as a gateway to get to the whole, all of our movements. And so the time is now. We need everybody to stand up as loudly as possible and ensure that this case cannot go through for all of our movements.
I'm Jay Saper with Jewish Voice for Peace, and I'm here to raise my voice to free Mahmoud Khalil. We see that the president is taking action in our name, and we refuse. We see this as a chilling of dissent, and we understand when you come for one, you must face us all. As Jews, we have an experience with fascism, and our tradition teaches us that we must fight against fascism. So that is why we are rising up right now at Trump Tower to challenge the president's disappearing, kidnapping, abduction of Mahmoud Khalil. I have members of my family who were killed at Auschwitz in the Holocaust, and so I am deeply compelled by my family's story to do everything I can to take action for all of our communities that are under attack right now. This has absolutely nothing to do about Jewish safety, and we will continue to raise our voices when they are talking about taking action against anti-Semitism. That is not the case. What they are doing is stifling the movement for Palestinian liberation, and as Jews, we are calling for the U.S. to stop arming Israel, because we believe our liberation is intertwined with one another, and none of us can be safe until all of us are safe.
I'm Jane Hirschman with Jewish Voice for Peace, and we're here to say to President Trump, he's got to stop authoritarianism, this fascism. I personally know about it. My parents were Holocaust survivors. My grandfather and uncle were abducted late at night, just like Mahmoud, just the same, and they were taken to jail. And my mother had to find them and get them out. Once they come for one of us, they're going to come for all of us. And we are here to say to Trump, no. And we are Jewish. We're here strong. There are over 216 of us. And this is a message we want to send to the president. From Palestine to Mexico, all the walls have got to go.
My name is Josh Dubnow. I'm here as a Jew because I refuse to allow this administration to speak in my name, to use our names as Jews, to carry out a fascist agenda. There is a long history of Jews fighting fascism, and we are here today as Jews and allies to say no to fascism. The Trump administration is a government that has far-right white supremacists, people that do the Nazi salute, and he's fine with that. He's fine with supporting the AfD in Germany and other neo-Nazi and far-right groups. He's not a friend to Jewish people.
The NYPD would like me to communicate that this has been your final warning and they will begin arrests now.
Well, Palestine is under attack. What do we do? Well, Palestine is under attack. What do we do?
I'm a militant anti-Zionist Jew. I'm ashamed. You guys have to leave here. I'm ashamed of what my country is doing.
Jamal Bowman, former congressman from New York's 16th District. I love showing up here to support people who are putting their bodies on the line to save our democracy. Honestly, I didn't even know this was happening. I happened to be in a neighborhood and someone told me there's a protest happening at Trump Tower. So I walked over here to just offer my support. I'm here fighting for democracy, fighting for justice, fighting for humanity. fighting for Brother Mahmoud Khalil, who was unlawfully detained in our country that's supposed to be a country that exercises First Amendment rights. Brother Khalil was a peaceful protester fighting against the genocide in Gaza, like millions across the country and millions around the world. We have to stand up and fight for him, and we have to stand up and fight for everything this democracy is supposed to stand for. We have a fascist, right-wing dictator in the White House. His henchman, Elon Musk, is a Nazi, and we need the people of our country to push back and fight back and stand up against all of the injustices and the inhumanity that's taking place in our country.
Former New York Congress member Jamal Bowman standing outside the protest, where inside Jewish Voice for Peace, hundreds of people gathered at the Trump Tower, where it all began in 2015 when Donald Trump came down the same escalators and first announced he was running for president. About 100 people were arrested.
First of all, I'd like to thank Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! For their coverage.
And I thank you for all those protesters standing up. It's also very personal to me because I lived in Tripoli, Libya, and got caught in the Arab-Israeli war and was evacuated, and that's when Gaza became part of Israel. I was also evacuated on the same day that Israel attacked the USS Liberty. And in the 70s, when they were going after black political leaders, the FBI came after me. And so I know these are lifetime commitments and people have to stand up. And right now, this is not a constitutional crisis, I will say. Again, I think this is a bloodless coup, and the American people need to pay attention. And every group, every person that stands up, and it's fantastic to see that protest at Trump Tower, and it's going to happen all over the country. I think people need to do whatever, with whatever gift they have, to help save our country and this world. Environmentally, one of the things I say is every dollar you spend, know how you're spending it and where you're spending it. And try not to be afraid to speak up and do whatever you can.
Simple things like read the Constitution, get to understand it, explain it to your neighbors. Any local organization that is active, become part of it. And we need to build our person-to-person relationships and strengthen those relationships. Instead of people feeling that they're alone in their homes, they should reach out and be part of a community and just make sure that we build those bridges and build those bonds, because that's one thing that fascism can't break. They can try to bring fear to us. They can try to let us think that there's not enough to go around, that we have to hold on to what little we have, when it's just the opposite. There's abundance, and we have to learn to share that abundance with everyone, so there's no people that are left out.
But you have to speak up for those who are so vulnerable and impoverished. Here we are, who have no power to speak out and are just struggling to hold on to their lives. But yes, the sense of community is really important. But also, if you have the will and the strength to call and get, and I am very much concerned about both parties, go after whatever legislators you can to get them to get off their butts and do their jobs. And that's part, as far as I'm concerned, entrenched politicians are part of the problem that allowed this to happen, and also the fact that over the years Congress gave so much of their power to the executive branch, and we don't have a balance now, checks and balances. So we have a lot of work to do.
I think the key is money, and it's the Supreme Court granting the right for billionaires to put as much money into the political system and really That's what causes the corruption of the whole system.
Citizens United.
Yeah.
Bernie
So,
Sanders did
again-
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Now, Bernie Sanders had quite a few talks, and he had like 5,000 people, and then in the other room there were even more people, and he was really talking to the people. And at the end, he asked them questions. You know, what does this happen for you? Oh, I won't be able to heat my house. Well, what? Oh, you over there. What's gonna, happen to you? And kind of got them into the conversation. That's it. Thank you.
I think it's necessary for us as citizens. We can't wait for our elected officials to
No,
do this.
no. They're not doing their
time
job.
Is now, time is now to lift up those voices. I'm sure there are voices that are wanting to stand up and are standing up to this dictatorship, but they need the support of everybody to make it happen. We have to get up, get off our couch, and get out there and participate within our community and communicate that these things are intolerable.
Well, this is why the April 4th. This is why the April 4th Coalition, why I keep showing up to speak up. This is one of the ways, and our community television is one of the ways. You know, we've lost our local newspapers. We have to also inform each other, and people need to read from all across the section of whatever news they can get. You cannot just get your news off of social media. You have to find out what's going on.
Right. I was lucky enough to go Saturday night to Fran Lebowitz spoke at Mass MoCA, the New York City writer, and it was very interesting to hear her talk. And she was very, very point blank about this is not normal. This is not the way things should be, and people have to do what they can and read. She said read. She goes, I don't even have the internet at my house. Anything in print, I read, and that's what we have to do. We have to read. We have to make,
Then we have to think. Read and think.
And then treat each other with respect. Because in New York City, she said, there's people from all over the world. They'll be sitting on the subway. I ride the subway, and there'll be a Hasidic Jew, and there'll be a Palestinian woman standing right next to each other. And they'll do the whole right. If you ask them, if you got them alone, they say, oh yeah, I don't like that person, yeah, I don't like them. But in New York City, they don't bother each other. They live and let live.
That's what I loved about Bridgeport, the mixtures of all different cultures. That's what this country is and is supposed to be about. But one of the people you might look up is Dorothy Thompson, who was quite a journalist, and her story is talking about Hitler. And of course, once again, Sinclair Lewis, it can't happen here, it's here. Timothy Snyder now.
Timothy Snyder, we got Gene Sharp, From Dictatorship to Democracy.
There's all kinds of things.
Muhammad Yunus, The World of 3.0, Zero Poverty.
Gilad Peled talking about his father, who actually was the general who gave the order that started the Arab-Israeli war, and then became a peace advocate because a friend who was Palestinian, either his niece or a daughter, was killed, and it turned his whole view of what peace. And of course, you and I are in contact with Rabbi Sheila and Maynard Ceder, and they're working with Combatants for Peace groups. There are groups that are already formed that you can become part of, but part of it is the continual dumbing down of Americans has to stop. And of course, when Americans are poverty-stricken, by design, I believe, it is really important that we start encouraging people to read and watch out what our children, so that they can learn.
Yeah, we need to end this now. We thank you for letting us run over a little bit, but find some peace at home, find some peace in your day, and reach out and get to know your neighbors and participate in building a society that we can be proud of, a social network that welcomes and not is worried
A
about.
warm and welcoming community.
So power to the people
Power
and
to the
solidarity.
There's power in the factory, power in the land, power in the hand of the worker. But it all amounts to nothing if together we don't stand. There is power in our union. Now the lesson